Bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Today we are in Malta. It's an incredible island snuggled in the middle of the Mediterranean between Italy and Tunisia and Libya. It is right there in the center. And you cannot get a big picture of European history without understanding the history of Malta. Strategic place, especially for the British. We're going to get into that, but first, this is Latina Literati. Bienvenidas, bienvenidos. Bienvenidas, bienvenidos. The strategic position of Malta means that since it is like the belly button of the Mediterranean, it has been controlled by everybody. Phoenicians, Carthaginians, Romans, everybody. The Goths, of course. You have everyone from, of course, the Crusaders all the way up to current day France and England. In fact, even Valletta, the capital of Malta, is named after one of the heads, Jean Parisot de Valletta, a head of the Knights of John of the Cross. And so this island is going to be strategic in the Crusades and will be a place where the Knights Templar and different orders, the Order of Malta, to this day exists. It's a Catholic order, and it is of great prestige to belong to the Order of Malta and to be a defender of the faith under the terms of the agreements with the Catholic Church. Malta is a fascinating place with so many different influences. The architecture, the people, the food, the language. The language actually has a lot of Arabic in it. But it's fascinating because during the Second World War, it was just brutally bombed by both the Luftwaffe, the German Air Force, as well as the Italians. And that is because it was considered the last British stronghold in the Mediterranean. But the people were fierce, fought off everybody, and so we'll talk a little bit more about the history. Since megalithic times, 5,000 years ago or more, there were temples established in Malta, and these ancient places are even older than the temples of Egypt. Pretty amazing to think about how humankind had the need to recognize the superior deity, whoever that may be in the region, and build beautiful structures that survive to this day on Malta. So Malta has been at the crossroads of history for millennia. As part of the Carthaginian Empire, as part of the Phoenician Empire, as part of the Roman Empire, Malta is again the center of the Mediterranean empires. And so there are villas and baths and colosseums from that time that you can visit today. Really, again, an interesting island, absolutely beautiful. It has turquoise water surrounded by some beautiful beaches. And so, of course, the cuisine is based a lot on the fruits of the sea, a lot of different seafood in their traditional diets. In terms of historical events, one of the earliest to continue to be celebrated is supposedly in the tradition St. Paul was shipwrecked on the island. And so there's a grotto that is dedicated to him, as well as a church in Medina. Really interesting, Medina, Rabat. The names are exactly the same as those you would find in North Africa. So you can see how closely this island was to the North African different civilizations. In 1091, the Normans conquer Malta and subsume it or make it part of the Kingdom of Sicily. And so it becomes part of what is passed on to different noble families that reign it as part of the kingdom of the Two Sicilies, it's actually called. So it just becomes part of what Europe will consider its most southern tip. Perhaps the most defining event in Maltese history is in 1530 when the Knights of St. John, a Catholic military organization, takes control of the island, builds it into a fortress in the Mediterranean, huge forts in Valletta, cannons everywhere, because they want it to be the bulwark against Ottoman incursions into southern Europe. And in fact, the Great Siege of 1563 is exactly that, where the Maltese and the Knights of St. John defend Malta against the Ottoman Empire and are victorious. It is a huge, huge part of the Maltese history and is celebrated, as you can imagine, and there is a lot of fortifications and history about this siege and what it meant to the Maltese. Today, Valletta is a UNESCO heritage site, and as you walk through the narrow streets and see the beautiful Baroque architecture, it really is a legacy to so many of the groups that ruled the island, including the Knights of St. John, who built massive fortifications everywhere. In 1800, the British take over Malta as a military base, and it is because of that that the Maltese endure unbelievable bombing, not unlike the bombing that's occurring right now in Gaza, Lebanon, and Ukraine. So there is a lot of destruction. Many cities are just flattened. And again, the Maltese, with the British support, are able to survive until 1942. And at that point, the British Empire awards Malta the Cross of St. George for bravery for the people and their brave fight during World War II. In 1964, Malta gains its independence from Britain and becomes a republic, and eventually decides to join the European Union. So Malta is a member of the European Union. So when you go, you use the euro where you would use in any other member state. So today Malta is a thriving nation. It, of course, is very dependent on tourism, but also has a lot of other industries like the fishing industry. There's just a lot to see in the beautiful islands. It's an archipelago, actually. Malta is the main one, but there are lots of other beautiful islands, Gozo and others, the Blue Lagoon, many grottos, cities in the interior that are worth seeing. It's just, you need time. You need time to explore, and a lot of it is done by ferry and by ship. This tiny island, whose history spans millennia, has some of the most hospitable people you will ever meet. It is an important part of Mediterranean culture and history, and its impact can't be underrated. Malta is a place where history, culture converge in just beautiful, magnificent landscape. And so to be in Malta is to be in a place where you can wander along beachfronts and beautiful streets. It's incredibly safe. And so it is, as I mentioned, very welcoming. And so I encourage you, if you can, go to Malta, stop in Malta, relax in Malta. And now for my favorite part of the video, the book recommendations. Surprisingly, there are many, many books about Malta, and many of them have to do with the role of Malta in World War II, the intrigue, obviously all of the attempts to fight off the different Axis powers, and there are a lot of books on the siege. But I wanted to kind of focus on stories that really talked about Maltese life and not necessarily the role of Malta on the world theater or having to do with other countries. So again, check your local library, check your local booksellers. We love our local booksellers. We love our local libraries. We want to support them. So the first book is called Counting Churches, the Maltese Stories. And so, of course, it talks about all the different architectural buildings that are used for worship and some of the stories that go along with it. Some of the stories that Maltese are telling you or share with you about their island and its history. And I just thought this is a good book to share. I also wanted to talk a little bit about the situation in Malta. There was a very famous journalist who was assassinated by car bomb, and her sons and husband continue the quest for justice. So it's called A Death in Malta, an assassination and a family's quest for justice. And so what was this journalist, this woman, trying to uncover, or did uncover and tried to get out into the public? Fascinating, because of course she uncovered things like corruption and paybacks and things that were not properly done in the government, and she paid for her life with it. So I think that there's a lot of similarities maybe between Malta and Sicily in that there are certain topics that are absolutely forbidden. And I just happened to be in Sicily driving past Catania many years ago, and the new mayor said, "We are going to fight the mafia, and we are going to blah, blah, blah." He was shot dead that day, the day he uttered those words. So again, fighters for justice all over the world, but this woman gave her life and her family continues to ask for justice. And I think this is a book that's worth reading because it shows you that the issue of corruption and the issue of political assassination is not significant to just one nation or one part of the world. It happens all over the world. And so we need to unite to stop it. Thank you so much for joining me on this joint journey, and let us know what you're reading. We would love you to subscribe to Latina Literati. What are you thinking? Have you been to Malta? What are your thoughts? Thank you very, very much. Con mucho cariño, mucho salud, mucho amor. Gracias.